In-depth journalism in the Memphis community, the Daily Memphian is of Memphis, not just in Memphis, and seeks to tell the stories of this city. TheDailyMemphian.com. Truth in place.
The ruling on the field stands.
We deliver jerseys, funny foam fingers, and everything you need for the game. But what you really get is so much more.
FedEx Delivery.
Game day spirit. What we deliver by delivering.
Welcome back to another edition of the Daily Memphian Memphis Tigers podcast. This is your host, Drew Hill, the Memphis Tigers basketball beat writer. I'm joined, as always, by Jonah Jordan, the Memphis Tigers football writer, but he's going to give us some basketball takes today.
I got the takes.
We got a big game coming up, huge game.
Is it huge?
Tomorrow. Yeah, it's massive, actually. In terms of where they stand now, just look at the big picture. It looks like they're going to probably need to either win out or win the conference tournament to get in the NCAA tournament.
Okay, I'm throwing the NCAA tournament out. I'm throwing it out because they're not making it.
Well, that's the whole point of the rest of the season, or it's over.
No, they're going to need to win the conference. I think.
Okay, then if they need to win the conference tournament, then this game is still massive because it matters towards getting a first round bye.
And the NIT.
It's critical.
And the NIT. I think people are kind of just completely ignoring that that's a thing. Like, this matters for your NIT hopes as well, does it not? Like, if you lose this and you lose Wichita State and you lose Houston again, could you miss the NIT? Like, is no postseason a possibility for this team right now?
No. They're going to go, like, when you look at, I suppose it's a possibility, but I just don't see them losing every game.
No, I'm not saying they are, but I'm just saying, like,
that they would essentially need to lose almost every game left,
like all five, and then like, in the first round of the tournament,
and then lose in the tournament. Because
which I don't think
when you look at sort of what the NCAA tournament picture is right now, like they're not obviously in it. They're not even in the first four out, or in a lot of cases not the next four out. But they're still on there. They would qualify as the on life support.
Yeah. Okay.
Type of team, which is usually means that
they'll be the top 3.
They should be an NIT
yeah.
team, especially coming from this conference and given the notoriety of the program and Penny. And it's just, isn't it? I mean, for me at least, it's just really hard to see them not making it at least to the NIT.
Yeah,
it would have to be Memphis just doesn't want to play in the NIT.
Yeah, it's just right now everybody's got that focus on the NCAA tournament.
Rightly so.
Rightly so. But then there is also this other thing, like, making the NIT wasn't what you wanted at the beginning of the season.
No, obviously
but
not.
Considering everything that's happened, everything they've gone through, you still want to make the NIT. You don't want to fall out of that either. So I think when you talk about NCAA tournament, you also have to talk about the NIT. I think you need to talk about both of them now. I think that's where this team is.
Sure, but I don't blame them for wanting to completely invested into.
You stay invested in the NCAA
until it's
tournament.
over.
Until it's absolutely over. But I still think that you need to be realistic and you need to say that there's a good chance that this team makes the NIT.
Right, of course. That's what we're looking at right now. Is like if the tournament started today, Memphis would not be in it, and that's not what anybody expected at the start of the season. It's just sort of the way that it's gone. In terms of storylines, there's a few going on right now. The first is like the great media debate of 2020, whether or not
I've not been involved in this debate.
Whether or not Penny Hardaway is above criticism.
Nobody's above criticism.
Well, I guess
except for me.
I guess it's not above criticism. That's the term. But in principle, nobody's above criticism. But whether he's deserving, I guess, of any sort of criticism.
You
have not weighed in yet, so I'll let you weigh in first.
Here's where I fall on that. I think that it is not his fault that James Wiseman left. I do not think it is his fault that DJ Jeffries.
Is it not his fault that James Wiseman left? That's another point of debate.
Well, I mean,
whether or not there was anything.
I talked to somebody. Some people think that, oh yeah, you could have kept the agents away from him. Oh yeah, you could have kept the family away from him. But in reality, James is going to do what James is going to do. I mean, like that was. I don't think Penny could have stopped that runaway train. So
besides the only thing
I think
is like if he never gets suspended
I think
then maybe things work out
because
differently.
the suspension stuff started in January. If we're being honest, it started in January. I think Penny could have handled it better starting then and on. And I'm not going to go into detail because I don't want to. He could have done a lot of different things, but at the end of the day, I don't think it's his fault that James left.
You say that like there's some big secret behind the scenes.
I think that he could have coached this team a little bit differently because I do not think.
So you would.
I don't think that they are.
So basically, what I'm picking up from you is that, and this is how I feel about the situation, is like, look, it's been super unfortunate from the beginning.
Yeah, from the get-go.
I don't think he's necessarily deserving of people coming and saying, well, look, you said all the smoke. You said that this was a tournament team and now they're not that. And look, he has dialed it back a little bit and been honest and said, like, look, when you have these expectations and you don't meet them, this is just part of what goes along with it. But at the same time, like, I just think given the current circumstances, it's not he's not above criticism. He's just not deserving of being criticized at the moment. That's
I don't
how
think
I
that
feel.
at all. I think that a lot of people on this team are the same players they were at the beginning of the season.
We've been over this, but I would totally disagree with you on
I
that.
think that the struggles on offense are still there. I think that even without James, that this is a top 10 recruiting class on the team.
Not without James and DJ.
Well, yeah, you're getting ahead of yourself, but without DJ, they're not, obviously. But a lot of the guys, I think that part of the problem is that college basketball is down this year. That in a normal year, a lot of the guys that were 3 and 4 stars would probably just have been 3 stars. Like, there was a reason some of these guys were as highly rated, and they ended up not being as good. So that he kind of got bitten there. But, like, I think if Penny could go back, Penny would do some stuff differently, which is not a big indication
Any
of
coach
him.
would.
Any coach would. Any first 2-year coach, he would go back and do things differently. Would he? I think taking Isaiah Maurice, I think that probably is a big debate that you could have right now.
Yeah, here's what I would say. I don't agree with you. To put it frank, on the we haven't these players are still the same. You saw Boogie Ellis make a turn and turn the corner and look better. You've seen Lance Thomas look better. He has learned over the course of the season. He has shortened the rotation down a little bit. The turnovers are down now.
You know,
now
Alex
that he's
Lomax has more
controlling
turnovers than made field goals this year.
But Alex Lomax is one example in an entire team of players. Like, I think even Precious now, like, he's always been good from the start, but the circumstances are totally different because you have the opponents just throwing every single guy at Precious.
Precious wasn't who I was.
I think
about.
even he has improved this season. But it's different to say that you think Alex hasn't improved or to say you think
Tyler,
all these guys are
Damian.
the same.
Alex, Tyler, Damian, I don't really think Lance has gotten all that better. Isaiah, like I think I don't know if it's Penny's fault or not, but I think there has been a little bit of a lack of development. I think Lester's gotten way better. I think Lester's impressed me a lot. I think he needs to stop fouling so much on defense, but some of that's not his fault. Some of that's the referees. But, like, their biggest problem is guard play, and I don't think a lot of those guards have gotten better. I think he's putting Boogie in a lot of different situations than he was at the beginning of the season, which has allowed him to thrive. But if Boogie were doing what he was doing now at the beginning of the season, there's no telling what type of player he would be right now.
I mean, you could also argue that guard play, that post depth has been probably the biggest problem. I mean, you got the turnovers, which is a lot on the guards, but it's been also on the forwards as well. I just think that in general, we have seen some improvement and that the circumstances are just not good. And you bring up you could say this is still a top 10 recruiting class or this is still a good recruiting class. But the truth is that when you look at the other top 10 recruiting classes, when you look at teams like Georgia, they're struggling. When you look at Washington, they're struggling. When you don't have elite players, and Memphis, let's just call it what it is. They had James, who was a top 10 recruit, and they had DJ, who was a very highly regarded recruit. Both are gone. Now they have good players who will probably turn out to be great college basketball players at one point, top 50 kids, but they're not elite players. So they are what they should be right now,
I think
given their current roster.
I think that they should be better than what they've put on the floor. I don't think you should beat East Carolina by only 4 points. That's not a good East Carolina team at all. That's not a good basketball team. Even by any metric, any eyeball test, anything, that East Carolina is not good. You should not beat them only by 4.
And that's fair.
Home.
And I think that's fair. But you could say that about almost every team in the country. Like Kentucky played Ole Miss. Memphis controlled that game against Ole Miss almost the entire time until the end when it got close. And Ole Miss led the entire game and Kentucky barely won. I mean, you could say, like, look, a team like Kentucky should destroy Ole Miss. Like, that just sort of happens in college basketball. Games are closer than you expect. And look, you could say that it goes the other way too. Like, and I wrote about this at dailymemphian.com yesterday, which is a few plays, literally a few plays, have determined the outlook on this season. Whether it's the rebound that would have tied the game, where they would have tied the game against South Florida, or Alex Lomax makes that shot at the end of the game against Cincinnati. Like, there are several different ways. Like the critical turnover against UConn that swung the momentum. Like, I know we're playing what ifs.
Yeah, they need to be better at finishing.
But if things go a little bit differently, we could have a totally different outlook on the team now.
My point stands is I don't think that Penny is above criticism because he has done some things wrong.
No, and I would agree on principle. Nobody is above criticism.
I'm not saying it's like criticism, like, oh, this was a huge mistake, but you can say, hey, you've done one thing wrong, you've done one thing right, one thing wrong. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not a big indication of him as a human being. You can say, hey, you have done such and such wrong, but he's also done a lot of good stuff. I think everything he's done with Precious and Lester is good. The fact that they're here is awesome. I think that, like, DJ was playing great before he got hurt, and you're right. I think DJ and Lester are going to be awesome next year. I think they're going to be, like, if they stay around the program and do what they need to do and do what Penny says to do, they're going to be probably two of the best players in the American Athletic Conference. But I'm not saying Penny's a bad coach, but you can sit here and say somebody has done something wrong. That's the big part, is that saying, hey, you've done something wrong isn't an indication of the hire. It isn't an indication of this. It's just saying, hey, this is a thing that has happened that, hey, you can learn from. That is something that is wrong with us as media in general. You can sit here and say, hey, I think this was a mistake, or hey, you made a few key lineup errors here. It's not a big indication of him as a human being or as a coach or of the hire or this.
But I think that's not the point. Is not to say that you can correct, something in games, because criticism as you should have played Tyler more or whatever is not. It's not the focus of this great media debate of 2020.
Well, the whole thing is dumb. The whole thing is stupid.
The focus is whether or not
it's a waste of time.
Whether or not Memphis is just. Whether or not you should be laughing and saying, "Ha, look, I told you so." He said all the smoke or whatever. That's what it is. It's not like Tyler should have been in the game at the end.
Those are the things that people need to be focused on. All the smoke stuff, it's done, it's gone. Who cares? It's a dumb debate.
All right, we need to take a break for a message from our sponsor.
The Daily Memphian Tigers podcast is brought to you by FedEx. Possibilities. What we deliver by delivering.
All right, so Memphis has 5 games left on the schedule. Houston at home tomorrow, at SMU, at Tulane, Wichita State at home, and then ending the season at Houston. Not a tough or not an easy stretch. No. Obviously a really tough stretch. But at the same time, it does set up well if you are going to try and move into a top 4 spot outside of having to play Houston twice, which you're probably not going to catch them at this point. You are playing the teams that you would want to play. You've got Wichita State, which is there just in front of you. You've got SMU, which is a game in front of you. And so both of those games are going to be totally critical to them getting this top 4 seed and getting this first round bye in the conference tournament, because as it stands right now, like, it's obviously going to be hard enough for Memphis to win the conference tournament, but it's just not a team you're going to picture winning 4 games in 4 days, correct, at this point?
Yeah, at this point it'd be a little bit more difficult. But is the big thing right now, is Quentin Grimes playing today or tomorrow?
He's doubtful, so that's obviously a big boost for Memphis.
Yeah, that's huge, because they've struggled against some good guards here in the past. But, yeah, no, I think that right now, you're playing for that first round bye. I think I think they can beat Tulane. They can beat SMU. It's those other 3 games, the 2 against Houston, 1 against Wichita State, that are the big ones. I wonder, Kelvin Sampson had some great things to say about Memphis at Media Day, and those continued here in the last week. He was talking about them the other day, that they're very talented, yada, yada, yada.
That sounds like classic Kelvin Sampson.
Classic Kelvin Sampson. I'm really interested to see how he comes out and kind of schemes against them.
I mean, he'll have a good game plan. When you look at sort of Ken Palm the rest of the way, they say Memphis has a 37% chance to win at home against Houston tomorrow, so not great.
Yeah, it's not great.
39% chance to win at SMU, 71% chance at Tulane, 50-50 split at home against Wichita State, and then 17% chance at Houston. So they are predicting 2-3 or maybe 1-4. I think if you get to 3-2, you've got to be somewhat satisfied, right? And I guess the best scenario would be
you steal this one.
Is that that would help, but you'd need to beat SMU and Wichita State if you really want a chance to get in that sneak into that top 4 and see if you can make a run.
I mean, I think they could go 4-1. They steal this one against Houston at home, get SMU, get Tulane, and then try and get Wichita State. Because I think the worst one is at Houston.
Tough one. That's a really tough one.
That's really, really difficult.
On CBS, it'll be a hostile environment on a Sunday, right as all the conference tournaments are starting up. That's going to be pretty brutal. So, all right, we do need to touch on football too. I will open up the floor to you. What is the storylines in football these days?
So we're going into spring camp here in about a month. It starts March 17th, I do think it was. Ryan Silverfield got his first commitment of the class of 2017 or 2021.
Whoa, we're going backwards.
I went back to Norvell's first class, to class of 2021, but it could be a lot like Norvell's class of 2017, which had TJ Carter, Obina Eze, a bunch of really good guys in it. It was Norvell's first time of having a real full class, and Silverfield, big step forward towards that. Picked up an offensive lineman yesterday, Royce White out of Georgia.
And you wrote about that?
Yes. It kind of filled a need a little bit because they're going to be losing some offensive linemen after this year. They're churning guys out on the offensive line, and there's been a lot of turnover, and there's probably going to be a little bit even more. I think Dylan Parham could go off to the NFL. Manny Arona Lopez could be off. So you need some guys there. And I think the independent 247 rankings, which is like the Barton and those guys had him ranked number 415 in the nation, which is super high for a Memphis guy. But the composite rankings, which is their algorithm that they run, had him at like 721 or something like that. But still, either way, really high. He'll probably be one of the higher ranked guys in the class, but they're going after offensive linemen, defensive linemen, and they need some tall receivers. So those are the big 3 that I mentioned yesterday and need some corners too. So those are going to be the 4 real positions. I think you see them hit the hardest here. But former offensive line coach gets an offensive lineman right out of the gate. It's pretty good.
Spring ball is just around the corner. Well, that'll wrap it up for us today. You can follow me on Twitter at DrewHill_DM. You can follow Jonah on Twitter at _Jonah Jordan. You can get this podcast or any other Daily Memphian podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or Stitcher. Thanks for listening.
We deliver tickets, team merchandise, and everything you need for the game. But what you really get is so much more.
FedEx Delivery.
Game day spirit. What we deliver by delivering.
In-depth journalism in the Memphis community, the Daily Memphian is of Memphis, not just in Memphis, and seeks to tell the stories of this city. TheDailyMemphian.com. Truth in place.